팬데믹으로 제약 바이오 시장이 급성장했습니다. 이 바이오 의약품, 바이오시밀러 시장 역시 계속된 성장이 예상되는 상황인데요. 오늘은 바이오시밀러 시장의 글로벌 기업 알보텍의 로버트 웨스만 회장님을 한국경제TV 더 CEO에서 만나봤습니다. Nice to meet you, Mr. Westman.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Great pleasure to be here today with you all, and looking forward, of course, to the interview.
Okay, let's start. The first question is about the brief overview of your company, like introduction of business or any key highlights.
Yeah, first of all, Alvotech is a global biosimilar company with end-to-end R&D in-house, with end-to-end manufacturing in-house. We are covering over 90 countries in the world with our sales and marketing network, and currently we have 8 biosimilars under development. So a lot of excitement, first product coming to the market, and we just got listed at Nasdaq in US and Nasdaq in Iceland lately.
Okay, as you said, Alvotech is a global company, so I want to know your global strategy.
Global strategy is has been always to find the best-in-class marketing partners globally. And with that, we are able to reach over 90 countries whenever we launch our products. And those over 90 countries count for over 95% the global biologics sales. So we basically can make sure that our products are placed in patients and patients which are in need almost the day the patent goes off. And that's why, we decided to build a global company, because we want to secure a better access of patients which needs those products going forward.
Okay, I think also your global strategic partnership, especially the marketing part, is quite a unique strategy because you have end-to-end process from development to manufacturing. So why did you decide to outsource sales and marketing part?
Yeah, it's a very good and fair question. I've built a number of companies throughout my career. One of them were Actavis, which had basically 99 employees in one country. I built it out in 8 years to third biggest in the world with 15,000 employees. And I did build sales and marketing greenfield in 70 countries. So I know how to build, and I have done this multiple times. So I know how to build, if you will, sales and marketing field force and how to approach customers, clients, patients, and doctors and wholesale. In this particular case, I viewed it a bit differently. Biosimilars take 7 years to develop. Those are very expensive product to develop, can easily cost $150 million up to $200 million. And then again, to place those products, you need very often a very dedicated, long years of experience. You need to be able to pull in more products than just the one biosimilar. You need to have a pool of different products to have a leverage to both payers, insurance companies, etc. So after taking this all into account, we felt partnering up globally with different marketing partners would be the best way to succeed. First of all, to gain market share throughout the world. Secondly, to make sure that our product would be available to all the patients around the world. Number 3, our marketing partners are co-investing in our R&D. So it's a kind of a risk mitigation that our partners are chipping in a big investment amounts. Collectively, our marketing partners are going to pay us milestones which will exceed $1 billion. So a big amounts they are paying us for access to our product. So we think that overall, with taking this all into account, having a great experience in going with my own field force in most of the key countries in the world on multiple occasions in my career, I felt that this would be the way to go and would be the most successful.
Okay, people and media is expecting biosimilar market would be bigger and bigger. How sustainable of this growth would be from your perspective and why?
I think it's a very good question because biologics are more important biosimilars. It's very young industry, if you will. I mean, going 20 years back, nobody knew even how to develop biosimilars and what the future would bring. So fairly new industry. Where we are today, 35% of global pharmaceutical sales are biologics. And as I mentioned, very effective. Those products can cost, like in the US, cost over $100,000 per patient. So all around the world, we have people which cannot afford those. Because of the high investment, it took me 10 years to build Alvotech before I could put the first product to market. I invested $1 billion just in the R&D, into the manufacturing, into the portfolio we have of 8 products before I could put the first product on the market. And then you have 7 years of development. You have cost of each product of $100, $150, $200 million. So this will all create the entry barrier into the biosimilar space. It's extremely expensive to invest there, and it takes a very long time and patient capital. And even though you have that all, there's no guarantee that you succeed. So overall, where we are today, we are seeing that biologics are continuing to grow simply because those products are more effective. We are seeing that around 40%, even more than 40% of new products which are filed with FDA are biologics. And I think long term they will grow overall to at least 50% of US and if not global sales also. So the growth is there. The competition is limited because building a company like ours costs $1 billion, takes 10 years. It's a highly technical expertise you need to have. It's a young industry. There's not a lot of highly capable management which have the experience to stay into the industry. But we believe that Alvotech has it all, and that's why we believe that the future for biosimilars, because patient needs our product. It's too expensive to buy biologics. Everyone needs our products. We are successful once we start to launch our products. So we believe that this is a very long-term play, to be honest.
Okay, and your company highlighted the importance of interchangeability. Why the interchangeability is important in biosimilar market? What is Alvotech's strong advantage and interchangeability part?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good question. I mean, interchangeability is a concept in US. So it's only a concept brings you a direct advantage in the US market. But if you look at the global market, what is interesting is that 60% of global biologic sales, 60% is in US. Interchangeability has through a few components. First of all, just to be interchangeable, it's not only about a clinical study. You need to design your product from beginning, and that's why it's very important to have all the R&D and manufacturing in-house. You need to develop your product so you can be identical to the brand. And at the end of the day, the interchangeability study we do is just to prove that there is no clinical meaningful difference between the brand and ourselves. So first of all, you need to develop the product in-house to match the brand. Once that's done, we invested in a very expensive for our biosimilar to Humira, very expensive interchangeability study, which we have passed and filed with FDA to prove that our product is interchangeable for the brand. What that gives you at the end of the day in US is that for this particular product is being dispensed by retail. This is a self-administrated product. It's being administered by a pen, which patients basically do at home. And once they go and pick up the product medication at the retail, it's not allowed automatically, if the doctor is prescribing the brand, to switch to biosimilars. It's legally only allowed in US if you're interchangeable. And that's why we felt back in time when we started to develop biosimilar to Humira, which is 8-9 years ago, it was very important to develop that product to make sure that we are interchangeable. This is the biggest single molecule in the world. It's $16 billion sales in US. Being interchangeable is extremely important, but also what we have, the high concentration of Humira, which is 90% of the US sales out of the 16 billion. We believe that we are in a great position to gain market share, and our marketing partner, which in this case in US is Teva. The meaning outside US is maybe not a legal one, but still helps with selling the product outside in Europe and other markets. Having the interchangeability, showing that there is no clinical impact on the patient to switch from the brand to our product. And that is more just to give a strong message and comfort to the doctors and whomever is prescribing. So overall, we think for retail product, interchangeability is very important. For other products which are not dispensed in retail, it has a less meaning. And so we are not necessarily going after all the products being interchangeable, but we will go after everything which will be dispensed in retail going forward.
Okay, let's talk about your pipeline programs. So could you please explain your key differentiating factors or competitive edges of your 8 pipeline programs?
Yeah, so basically going into individual product would be pretty lengthy, but I can give you the concept overall. I mean, first of all, we are very much focused on when we select a product, both we think about the molecule itself, the brand itself, how that can change over time. For instance, Humira was in 50 milligrams. We expected it to become 100 milligrams. So we just focused on 100 milligrams from beginning. We are basically using devices like pens and pre-filled syringes, which give us advantage. The key therapeutics we are focusing on is autoimmune diseases. It's oncology, respiratory, and ophthalmology. So just to name the few of the therapeutics we are in. But a lot of thoughts goes into the R&D and making sure that at the end of the day, we will have a competitive advantage once we get to the market.
And I heard that you have 5 platforms in Iceland, Germany, US, and China. Did pandemic impact your supply chain?
No, not really, because the supply chain is in Iceland. So we have our both drug product and fill finish in Iceland. The key, of course, was to already 24, 36 months ago to make sure that on many of the components we would have dual or triple sourcing for some of the components. For the long lead time item, we have been sourcing to prepare our launch into US for now 2 years. So I think we have been very thoughtful about the supply chain. And of course, last but not least, is that we have a strong team managing this, understanding that we have a pandemic first, of course, with COVID, and then lack of supply of some components because of the crisis we have in the world. But I think we have managed very well, and we don't see that we will have any major issues. And at the same time, I mean, just to say it here, we have built out already capacity, which we believe will last us until 2030 at least. And we will be able to launch 8 of our product without expanding the capacity to what we have today. So overall, we are very confident on the supply chain. Of course, there are always some tasks to deal with, but having a great team is very important.
As a Korean, I'm so curious about what does Korean market means to Alvotech?
Yeah, I think overall, I mean, I'm very proud of it. I mean, I've been operating in Korea since 8 or 9 years already. I was one of the first one to invest into Korea. I'm, of course, very proud of that. That was with another company called Alvotech. We focus still in Alvotech on mainly small molecules, not biosimilars. Business venture in Korea is focusing on small molecules. We employ around 450 people in Korea, and our turnover is around $220–30 million in Korea. So we understand, of course, Korea very well. We understand the business, the environment, and we also understand what is very important is that two of the great companies in the biosimilar, Samsung and Сел트리온, were born in Korea. Those two companies I have high respect and regards for. They have done an amazing job. Biosimilars is a young industry, and the understanding of the industry is still lacking in many countries, because I think there is no country in the world that fortunate to have two of the leading biosimilar being based in one country. So the understanding of investors, analysts, the environmental society in Korea of biosimilars is very important. And that's why we wanted to see, with a partnership of one of the leading banks in Korea, to see if we could, build up interest in Alvotech going forward. And that's why the team has been visiting investors, mainly just to present ourselves and explain what we are all about.
Okay, and your company was listed in June 16th in Nasdaq and also listed in Iceland. So is there any reason for dual listing?
Iceland for Alvotech has a strong meaning. It's employing 600 out of 800 employees. Our production and a big portion of the R&D is in Iceland. So there is a lot of interest in Iceland for Alvotech. And investors have been asking a lot about Alvotech, where they can invest, and we wanted to make it easy and accessible for them. So we listed at Nasdaq in Iceland. If you look at the natural home for the business, if you will, as I mentioned, 60% of the global biologic sales is in US. So maybe more natural long-term home is, when it comes to the stock exchange, is in US. First of all, of course, US being the biggest stock market in the world. Secondly, Alvotech revenues will mirror that, the fact that US is the biggest market in the world. So we believe that this was a great combination to have, can we say, the biggest markets in the world and most likely the smallest market in the world, and do a list there. So it was quite exciting times for us last few weeks.
Okay, because of the market backdrop in U.S. stock market, the share price of most of the U.S. company was declined. Do you have any updates or information which can be appealing to the investors?
No, I mean overall, I mean if you look at the world market today, it's we are in a turbulent time, and we are not concerned about that. Overall, how we view the business, and I'm by far the largest shareholder in the company, a long-term holder in the business going forward. Going to continue to support the business as executive chairman. So I'm looking at building a long-term value for the shareholders. And what we are doing now, we have just recently launched into Europe and Canada, and we are launching into the rest of the world, our biosimilar to Humira. We have a fixed date, beginning of July, to launch into US next year, which will be a very big milestone for the company. And we have said generally that the business after that will become cash flow and positive going forward after that. So I think, I mean, the main issue is to start to launch the products into the big markets. We have also completed and announced successful clinical trial for our next in-line biosimilar. So that is going to be filed now in coming months. So overall, I think investors will, I believe, view Alvotech going forward on fundamental long-term value, how we will succeed to launch products. Will we be profitable? Will we manage to bring in a high growth? How is our profit margins? So short-term turbulence in a turbulence time, meanwhile, we haven't launched into the big market US, is something which can be expected and doesn't really bother me as such.
I've heard that you acquired a few Korean companies roughly 10 years ago. So do you have any more M&A plans for future growth of Alvotech?
I think overall, I mean, what we are doing with Alvotech is we have built the company greenfield. We have invested mostly in all the infrastructure, manufacturing, R&D in-house. The pipeline, except one product, was fully developed in-house. But I don't necessarily foresee that we would be doing M&A, acquiring companies, if you will. But we will continue to look out for partnerships where we can continue to increase the size of our portfolio. There might be opportunities like with one of our products to acquire technology, which could save us 4 or 5 years and take over from there to get the product to market. And that is something we will continue to look into, definitely going forward.
Already you mentioned you're expecting an approval of Humira and you're expecting to launch commercial in 2023. So I want to know the specific expecting growth in revenue.
Yeah, so basically what we have guided the market officially, I need to stick to that. So basically 2025 year end, we expect that we have launched 5 products to the market. We expect that we will have revenues exceeding $800 million. And we expect EBITDA margin to be above 60%, which of course is very strong EBITDA. So that's where we are guiding the markets. And as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be driven by product launches. And we will at this point in time have launched 5 products already in the market.
I know your company is still at early stage of the listed company, but as shareholders, do you be curious about your shareholder-friendly strategy from the company? Do you have any comments on this?
No, I think overall, I mean, you have, first of all, you have to have a very solid strategy going forward. When you go back 10 years, my belief was that biosimilar would become lead products in the future. And I expected that the regulatory environment would turn into favor of biosimilars. And if I would invest $1 billion, I would be in a good place 10 years later. And that basically is what happened. Having a good strategy means very solid R&D platform, production platform, being able to sell the product, having strong pipeline, having a portfolio which basically is a little bit different from the competition, as I maybe mentioned a bit earlier, is crucial. Being investor friendly, the best we can do is being as open as we can, bearing in mind, of course, that we are listed in Nasdaq, communicate and keep investors as well informed accurately as we can. So that's, I mean, what we will aim to do and do our best to do. And of course, there are always limitations being listed. But we have a high ambition to basically make sure that our shareholders understand what's next and where we are going from here.
Okay, lastly, I want to hear your closing remarks toward Korean investors who are planning or expecting to invest in Alvotech.
Yeah, I think overall, as I mentioned, I've been in Korea, visiting Korea now for, I guess, over 8 years. Been an investor in Korea. As I mentioned, we are a company in Korea employing in one of my holding companies, not Alvotech, 450 employees. So I'm very proud of being around Korea, being a successful investor in Korea. So we felt that coming to Korea to offer Koreans to invest in Alvotech was something at least for me, is exciting. We believe that our company is extremely, exciting to invest in long term. We have a very good proposition when it comes to strategy and long-term growth. So I just hope that, again, now when I come with a biosimilar company, I will be welcome. And again, always look forward to visit Korea, which I always do a few times a year. So looking just forward to it.
네, 미국과 아이슬란드 동시 상장으로 이 성장 기대감을 불러일으킨 기업입니다. 바로 알보텍이었는데요. 이 바이오시밀러 시장의 성장과 함께 알보텍의 주가 성장도 함께 기대해 보겠습니다. 한국경제TV 더 CEO 오늘 준비한 시간은 여기까지입니다. 시청해주신 여러분 고맙습니다.